You know, one thing that drives me crazy is when I spend a lot of time working on something only to find out it was really not even needed. In this episode, I want to talk about how new safety managers, they spend a lot of time working on stuff that doesn't matter, and they miss the main things they need to work on because they're so busy focusing on the stuff that doesn't even matter. In this episode, I'm going to share with you 7 things that I see people that are new to the safety manager role focus on that's really just a waste of time. And at the end, I'm going to round it out with the 8th one, which is a bonus one, which is really something that ties it all together. So stick around to the end because that one is well worth watching the video. Let's jump in. Well, hey, friend, my name is David Sawyer. I'm a safety coach. I help busy managers go from feeling overwhelmed by OSHA compliance to feeling OSHA ready. So you got clarity, confidence, and peace of mind that you have a safety program that actually works. You see, the goal is to prevent accidents and avoid an unexpected OSHA audit. And that's what I help my clients do. If you haven't already, go to my website, helpwithosha.com, and you can access a free OSHA audit checklist. This is a great starting place, right? It's like the starting point. A lot of people that are new to safety feel like they're just scared of an OSHA inspection. Well, this will take that stress away because I will walk you through exactly what you need to do to be prepared for an OSHA audit. This isn't just a PDF checklist. It's not just something that you could find. It's actually a video where I walk you through the checklist and identify key metrics, key things you can do to prepare your company for an unexpected OSHA visit. So go to my website, helpwithosha.com. You can access a free OSHA audit checklist today. It will save you some stress. Now, let's talk about saving you some time. Let's talk about some time wasters that I see new safety managers do because they really don't know what else to do. The number one thing, and this isn't in any particular order, but it's just something that usually this is what people focus on. They try to make perfect PowerPoints. They have some safety training PowerPoints, and so they get out the PowerPoints and they go, okay, how can I make sure that this lockout tagout safety PowerPoint is on point, right? I'm going to focus on the PowerPoints. I'm going to focus on the bullets. I'm going to focus on the transitions, right? Back in the day, it was sound effects. We've kind of gone away from that, thank goodness. But I remember when PowerPoint was the new, fresh thing. PowerPoint is not new and is not fresh anymore. In fact, it's kind of like that old stinky stuff where you're like, ugh, I don't want another PowerPoint presentation. PowerPoint is a tool. You got to have the information up here. Have some stories. Have some way to communicate the safety that you're trying to get across, right? If you have key safety points you're trying to get across, you don't need to kill them with PowerPoint presentations, right? You want to just make sure you're using that as a tool so that you're communicating safety effectively and consistently, but the PowerPoints don't have to be perfect. Don't waste a lot of time perfecting PowerPoints. And you know what's worse than PowerPoints? Trying to perfect handouts. This is ridiculous. Handouts are great, but people don't read them. They don't focus in on them. They're supplemental. They're meant to be a supplement to whatever you're talking about, whatever you're training on. I'll never forget, I had a company I was working with, and I was providing training on a regular basis, on a monthly basis. Now, I was working through a translator because they had about half of their workforce spoke Spanish and about half their workforce spoke English. And so I'd have training handouts where we'd have a Spanish handout, we'd have an English handout. And I would take the handouts and I would create them, and then I'd create them in English because that's what I understand, and then I'd put them through a translation software. I was just using Google Translate, and I was translating the handout into Spanish, And then I'd hand out the handouts in English and Spanish, and it was meant to be supplemental. If we're talking about fire extinguishers, had a picture of a fire extinguisher, talked about some of the main facts about fire extinguishers. We had it in English, we had it in Spanish. Boom. That's good enough. And I'll never forget, the HR manager wanted me to make sure that the handouts were very, very clearly edited in Spanish and English so that the wording was perfect. Now, listen, there's nothing wrong with getting the wording right, but don't waste your time focused on that because most people aren't going to read it. Again, it's supplemental information. It's meant to be good. I rely more on pictures than actual words. The training comes from the presentation. The training comes from the presentation. Just remember that. So don't worry about perfect handouts. Don't worry about perfect PowerPoints. And the next one is perfect written policies. This drives me crazy when I'm dealing with people that are very corporate. Now listen, written policies are important. They set the expectation for the company for what's expected. But I don't need the wording to be perfect. If I have a lot of shall, employee shall furnish this, employer shall do this, people just tune that out. The purpose, there's two different objectives here. If I want to create a safety program where people don't get hurt and people do the right thing, I need to clearly communicate the expectations. I need to have signs. I need to have training. I need to have things that's relatable. I need to have stories. I need to have context. I need to have pictures of their organization and their company, right? Think about your workers. They don't want to read a bunch of legalese. They're not going to read it. They're not going to care. They want to understand what you're asking them to do. Clarity and brevity. Be short, be concise, be to the point. If I've got a written procedure that's a page long, nobody's going to read it. So clarify, 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 simplify, simplify, simplify. Now, if the purpose is for legal, then you got the wrong purpose. We shouldn't be writing things to hold people's, this is going to keep me out of jail because I wrote it a certain way. That's not going to work. Yes, it needs to meet the standard. It needs to be compliant, but use language that people actually understand and don't spend forever working on your policies. The whole reason we have a policy is to communicate the expectations. So don't waste your time trying to make them perfect. Now, number 4, tons of safety binders. Don't waste your time having 18 different safety binders. You need clear, organized paperwork. You need to have a systematic approach. And ideally, you have some core safety programs. I like binders. I'm a fan of binders. I like them. They're easy to understand. Nowadays, everybody's kind of moving to online stuff, meaning I've got everything on the computer and I don't even need a binder, but I like reading papers. Lots of times when I have things on my computer, I go ahead and print it off so I can read it and I'm not reading it on my laptop. So there's no problem having written documents in binders, but you don't need 18 binders with beautiful, binder strips and laminated documents and colors. You don't need all that. You don't. You just need it to be very easy to find and understand and in compliance with the OSHA regs. So don't worry about that. All right, getting into something good here, buddy. Safety committee agendas. Safety committee agendas. Now, a safety committee should have an agenda for that month. It should be very clear. You should have a format where we're covering old business, we're covering recent incidents and accidents, we're covering projects that we're working on, and here's some things to be looking for in the future. Here's some hazards to be looking for. You don't need more than 4 or 5 at the most bullets for what's going to be on the agenda. I see people make safety committee agendas and they're putting clip art on it, and they're making it pretty with fonts and all kinds of nice things. Look, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a waste of time. You want to have it simple, to the point. We want to be able to hand this out in the meeting or email it before the meeting, and people are going to skim it. You know, when you get an email, think about when you get an email. If I get an email that's 3 or 4 paragraphs long, I'm just like, oh, all right, here we go. And I'm looking for what's actually important in there. That's how people are looking at the agendas. All they want to know is, how does this affect me? How does this affect me? In fact, I could do a whole separate video on that, because usually when you're in a leadership role, that's what your audience is thinking. How does this affect me? And so when you're writing a safety committee agenda, you want the agenda to be very easy to understand. These are the main things. Keep the main things the main things. All right. Number 6, when it comes to time wasters, the latest and greatest new certifications. And you could even replace certifications with safety courses. Look, I've been doing this a long time. I get emails all the time that say, hey, we're covering the new record-keeping rules. We're covering the new combustible dust standard. We got a workshop or a training event, or an in-person training where you can come and you can learn the new, and there's something always there. If you don't have combustible dust at your organization, don't go to the combustible dust seminar. If you have 3 people that wear respirators, you don't need to go to the day-long respirator training course. Now, let me put a caveat in there. I'm talking in generalities. If you have ammonia safety and you have something that's deadly and people are in respirators because of that, that might be something different. You might need that specialized training. But I see people going to trainings that they don't even have the equipment to do it, right? I've literally seen people that go to laser safety training because their company's thinking about getting a laser. If your company's thinking about doing it, you don't need to spend a day in the training class. It's a waste of time. Use your time efficiently to prevent accidents so that you can make sure that you're focused on the key hazards. There are all kinds of safety seminars, safety training, safety events. Some of it is good. A lot of it is fluff. You don't have to travel to go to a safety conference that's, going to take 4 days out of your week, and you go there and you learn nothing, right? Now, conferences can be good if you know what you're going for. It's kind of like college. And I'm going to go off on a tangent here, but I've got a 16-year-old. It won't be very long until he is applying for college. And when he goes to college, I want to make sure I send him to a school that I feel, number one, we can afford, and number two, is going to prepare him for the career that he wants to have. I don't want to send him to a school just to get experience in college. As somebody that's a busy manager, you don't need to go to a conference just to get experience at a safety conference. You need to plan, what do I actually need to learn? What takeaways am I looking to get out of this? And then make the decision what courses, what certifications to get. We're not just looking to build our resume. We're trying to focus on things that are going to help us do our job better. Now, the seventh and final time waster that I have before I go into the big one that's kind of the overarching one is tracking the wrong metrics. Now, stick with me on this, because you want to make sure that you're tracking key items. You want to make sure, first and foremost, you're tracking recordable injuries. When I come into a new organization, when I'm working with a brand new manager in safety, I always talk about, hey, let's look at your OSHA logs. Let's look at your recordables. Let's look at what is actually hitting the mark as a recordable. That's something we need to be tracking, right? That's a no-brainer. You have to track that. That's very important. But then you get into some of the areas that people end up tracking, and you go, why are you tracking that? Right? If you have somebody that's doing a safety inspection and they're supposed to be going and inspecting one department to make sure they're wearing the right PPE, well, they can go out there and they can inspect the PPE and they can track, make sure everybody's wearing the right PPE. But I've literally seen managers where they have whole binders full of PPE checklist where they just have checks going down. And I said, why are you keeping all this? Well, I just want a record of it. I want to track it. How are you tracking that? They either did it or they didn't. It's either yes or it's no. You don't need to track that. If there's a problem, you fix it, right? If Eddie isn't wearing the right PPE, you correct it right then and there. You don't make a note of it and then come back, and say, Eddie, I've noticed that for the past 5 weeks you haven't been wearing PPE. No, you should have fixed that on day one. So fix what can be fixed immediately. You don't have to have a track record of it forever. You need to have the expectation set, right? This is the PPE we're going to be wearing in the department. But I don't need to track every time somebody didn't wear it. I just need to fix it immediately. Same with forklift inspections. Now, am I going to track my forklift inspections? Yeah, I'm going to track my forklift inspections. I'm definitely tracking my forklift inspections. But there's certain things that's like, why are we tracking that? Right? There's certain things we don't need to track. There's certain things we just need to fix. Oh, I noticed Tom's not wearing a seatbelt. Then fix it. You don't make an X beside Tom's name and then keep a record of it for 5 years. You fix it right away. So you want to track what's important. You can get bogged down in paperwork. And it's funny because I'm a safety coach. I hate paperwork. I try to eliminate it everywhere I can. It's kind of like the hierarchy of controls, just to go off on that for a second. If I can eliminate the hazard, that's what I'm doing. If I can eliminate the paperwork, that's what I'm doing. So I'm not going to worry about keeping a whole bunch of paperwork to prove something that I know should have been fixed to begin with. Make sure you're tracking the right information. Now, this is the 8th time waster. And this is not just a time waster, it's also the number one cause of stress for safety managers. Doing it alone. The safety manager cannot do it alone. Safety is everyone's responsibility. That means there needs to be buy-in. There needs to be ownership. And most importantly, there has to be a system. You have to have a system. Safety managers don't fail because they don't care. They fail because they don't have a system. That is why I created my stress-free safety program. I wanted managers that are new to safety to be able to have a turnkey system so they know where they need to focus their energy. Rather than focusing on perfect PowerPoints and perfect handouts and perfect policies, you need to focus on the hazards. Look around your work area. Get out on the floor. How are people going to get hurt? Where have accidents happened in the past? Where have incidents happened in the past? Where have we had forklift collisions? Where have we had minor fires? Where have we had something that could have been big if it wasn't prevented? We want to zone in on the hazards that affect us specifically. The hazards that hit our company, where are they? And then have a plan. Set clear expectations with your team. Train, written programs, making sure that we clarify this is how we're fixing the problem. This is what safety looks like. And then we build in buy-in. We build in buy-in. Those are the 3 phases that I use. We do a safety assessment to find the hazards. What does it look like now? Then we set clear expectations. We do training, we do programs, we communicate. This is what safety looks like. And then the third step is we build in buy-in so that employees take it on, so that managers take it on, so that people actually say, hey, this is how we do it here. And we build a safety culture that's not just about compliance, but actually prevents people from getting hurt. And the fourth thing is you don't do it alone. You don't do it alone. When you do it alone, you will burn out. When you have the stress-free safety program, you have a safety expert in your corner. You have consistent coaching where you know what your next step is. So you're not spinning your wheels and wasting your time on things that don't matter. You have a lot of responsibility, and you can do this, but you don't have to do it alone. It took me more than 15 years to create this system, and we can expedite, we can speed up how long it takes you to have a safety program that works at your company. So if you haven't already, go to my website, watch my stress-free safety workshop. This will show you exactly how I work with clients so that they go from feeling overwhelmed to OSHA ready, so that you can have clarity about what you should be doing. You can have confidence that if OSHA walks in the door, if there's an accident, you know what to do. And you can have peace of mind to sleep at night so that you know, hey, I got this covered. You're not worried about what's going to happen or am I missing something? No, you know what you need. And you got an expert in your corner. If you have a problem, you have somebody that can help you get through it. So check out my stress-free safety workshop. And until we talk again, do everything you can to keep the people you work with safe, because no one should get hurt at work.